Hey guys! So I wanted to do a quick video on the art journal supplies that I use the most frequently in my art journals. And I'd want to focus this on the actual supplies themselves instead of things like paper scraps and things like that that I collage into my journal. So this is going to be solely on the actual supplies themselves. And I'll talk a little bit about the things I have really used frequently, the things that have not really hugely been important, and then some of the things that I think are kind of like must-haves if you're beginning or if you're starting out. So yeah. If you have any questions about things that you do want to try out, hit me up in the comments or on my Instagram, and I will be more than happy to let you know if I've tried them before and if they were worth it or not. I've tried almost everything, so I've probably everything in terms of like an art supply medium I have given a try at least once. And yeah, so I'll do a really quick, we'll go left to right and talk a little bit about the stuff that I have a lot of and frequently use. So I'll start up here real quick with my watercolor set. This guy's brand new. Well, not brand new. He's like 2 months old now, but I think he's brand new. This is a Winsor and Newton Cotman edition, and he's got 45 colors, and he was a pretty big step up because before then I was using this right here. I don't even know what brand this is. It just says Raphael, so I don't know. But I think it's, yeah, 10 colors. And I've used this set for maybe 5 or 6 years actually, like a really, really long time. I didn't do a lot of watercolor work before though, so that might have something to do with it. I'm using them a lot more now. But it took forever, and right now the black and the purple and the red are kind of wearing out, but it took a very long time for me to use this up. So a good watercolor set is a bit of an investment, but it's totally worth it in my opinion. I wouldn't say it's a must-have, but if you are interested in watercolors, I would say start out with like a little travel set. They're usually like $20 for like a medium quality one. If you want a really good quality one, it's like $40 at an actual art store, but you can get them online for way cheaper, and I do recommend checking online first. And so yeah, so a little travel set is what I've been using for years, and it's done me wonders. And now that I have this guy here, it's been like absolutely amazing. Like I love this. This is like one of my most frequently used art supplies recently. So yeah, the really, really nice set there. The other thing that I use quite a bit, mainly in my personal journaling. So it doesn't show up in my art journals as frequently, but my washi tapes, I think I've just got collection here. This is maybe 20% of my actual collection. I have like 70 washi tapes. But you know what? I have no regrets. I love them. I use them quite a lot, and I can't resist them. I think they're the cutest thing, and I love them. There's so many really beautiful ones. So yeah, washi tapes. Again, I wouldn't say it's a must-have. In fact, if you use them a lot, then it's worth it. But I find like you really, like most people just have a collection but don't actually use a lot of it. But yeah, they're super cute. I love them. One thing that you never really think about very frequently is clips, that sort of thing. Like just the stuff that you're like, oh, I don't need these, until all of a sudden you have a page, you're working on a page, and the corners keep on curling up, or it's the very end of your journal and the whole thing wants to keep on closing, and you're like, God, I wish I had a clip right now. And these are super fancy. I think someone gave these to me as a gift or something, but like bull clips are amazing. And if you don't have any of these on hand, like a hair clip or anything like that would work really well. But yeah, they're invaluable. And there's something you never really think about. But I would definitely say that that's also maybe a must-have, unless you enjoy curling edges or like trying to weigh them down with something while you're working. So yeah, little clips are really great. And I do have a huge collection of these in my cupboards as well. Over here, this is just a tiny, tiny portion of my stamp collection. I've been collecting stamps since I was like a little kid, so I have a ton. In fact, I enjoy making my own as well. So I think stamps are really useful, and you can get them for really, really cheap. Like just a little set like this was like $1.99 from the art store. And I have couple different sizes of these. I have a couple of stamps that I've made on my own and that sort of thing. And when you can get them for a good deal, they're totally worth it. But yeah, this little set will get you really far as well. For $1.99, you're really getting your money's worth. So I definitely recommend them, and I think they're great. I'm gonna move up here for now. So a really good set of not watercolor, but of paintbrushes. I think they're pretty useful, but I don't think that like they're useful if you really decide to go for watercolors. I have a set, a huge amount of paintbrushes, but these are the ones I use the most frequently. This guy here for really big washes to cover up a whole page really quick is really great. These three I use very frequently, but at the end of the day, if I were to choose one paintbrush, it would be this guy here, of just this medium size that can get me through just about any project I want. And the rest of them are they're great to have, but they're not necessary. And yeah, so they're really good investment if you can get them for cheap with like a coupon or on sale or whatever. I definitely recommend getting some, because you will notice the quality is way better. But again, it's not a must-have, because I'll get to that in a little bit here. But there's a couple of alternatives that you can use to paintbrushes that are really great as well. So I'm gonna move down here. Clattering noise. So I collect fountain pens. I love them. I have a whole lot, and I've been using fountain pens since I was taught cursive in my primary school when I was living in Europe when I went to school, and I still actually have that fountain pen. It's this guy right here, this little red one. I don't use it very often now, but he's still kicking. But definitely not a must-have, but something that I use very frequently. But they are very expensive. It's a very expensive habit to get into. And in terms of their value, I think some of them are outrageously expensive, but they're things that are just very beautiful and things that I use very frequently. So I think it's worth it, but again, a huge investment and definitely not a must-have. So yeah, fountain pens, I love them, but they're so expensive. The one thing that I do think is definitely a must-have is a really good fine liner. This is my absolute favorite. See if we decide to focus. There we are. Staedtler Pigment Liner 0.05. I've tried so many liners over the years, and I always have so much trouble because they always say, oh, it's waterproof, and they're not waterproof. So this guy here has been absolutely amazing. It's been, I think, a couple months now, and I've used it up way too much. So I love this guy. If you're someone who wants to get into watercolors or inks or anything like that, and you prefer lining your work first, this is fantastic because it will not bleed once you go over it with water. And I use it so often, so frequently. So one of my absolute most used pens of all time. And I think the rest of these are just like a collection of different kinds of random pens. Really not that important, but I do end up with a small collection of those as well. I've got a couple of metallic pens over here. One of my favorite brands, Faber-Castell. I do use them very frequently, and I do love them. Staedtler and Faber-Castell are probably my two most frequently used pen brands. So this is an alternative to paintbrushes. If you do decide to go into inks or watercolors, this is something that you may want to look into. They're called water brushes, and they're basically they're filled with water. You can see it's in there, and the top is just an actual brush. And these come in different sizes. These two, I'm not even sure what kind of brand they are, but I got them ages ago, and they're not amazing. They leak quite a bit, and they're not great. But this guy here, it's a brand called Pentel Japan, and this is one of my second most frequently used pens or brushes or whatever of all time. I love this thing, and if you're someone who enjoys doing watercolor when you're on the go, this is fantastic. This is an absolutely great investment, and they're not that expensive either. They were $6, but you can use this for ages. It's great. Next up, this is one of my personal must-haves, but it may not be for everyone. They are mechanical color pencils. And someone got me onto these ages ago. They're by Pilot Color Eno, and they're just a mechanical pencil. And I love them because I'm not a huge fan of actual HB pencils, because I find that they're too dark and they smudge and they're really hard to fully erase. And I don't really like them very often. And I stopped using them after I got these because I can pick the color that's closest to what I'm actually going to be drawing. And they're easy to erase. They're nice and light, and they're absolutely perfect. They're one of my most frequently used pens, but it may not be the thing for you. If you're a pencil person and you prefer them, then that's really great. But if you do want an alternative, these guys are fantastic, and I love them. Next up, lots and lots of gel pens, but I'll focus on these. This is my third most frequently used pen, the Jelly Roll Japan. And I have the different sizes. They just came out with like the 0.05, 0.08, and the 0.10 for the different nib sizes. And these are really, really great because they write on dark surfaces. Almost any surface that you can think of, they will write on it. Magazines, on top of like acrylic paint or watercolor paint or anything, on top of black paper, anything, that these will write on it, and they won't like skip out little parts and all that kind of thing. And they're nice and opaque, and one of my most frequently used pens as well. So I would say if you prefer doing a contrasting white on black, the Jelly Roll Japan, totally worth it. And I'll come down here for a little while. So these are my inks. I've used the Winsor & Newton brand, and this one, Daler and Rowney, not 100% sure. And I also use the Liquitex paints as well. And these are water-based, and these are acrylic, I believe. And I did inks long before I did watercolors. I preferred inks for a very long time. The big difference between them is that inks are usually more permanent, whereas watercolor, you can move it around even after it's dried. So you can paint something and then you say, okay, I don't 100% like this, so you can put some water down and move things around, whereas with ink, it's permanent. So if you prefer to have something where you put down a layer of a color and then you put down another layer and you don't want them to mingle, you don't want them to mix together, then inks are where that doesn't happen. So that's the main difference between them. But the results are usually very similar, or often are very similar. They're very like translucent, and they look very similar in terms of their end product. So yeah. And then a few things that, the one thing no one ever talks about, but I use most frequently. I never talk about this because like you always kind of take these for granted, just like you do with the little clips. But a really good pair of scissors and a glue stick are my probably #1 most useful art supply of all time. Because I do a lot of collage work. I do a lot of pasting things into my journal. So a really good glue stick, and I prefer glue stick over liquid glue, but it's really up to you. I think there's glue sticks, liquid glue, and then tape. Those are the three most frequently used types of adhesives in art journals. Tape, I find I don't like it because the edges will kind of still come up, and I don't like that at all. Whereas glue stick I will use the most frequently, and I'll use liquid glue occasionally, but not very often. And if it does come to liquid glue, I prefer Mod Podge. That's my favorite brand of liquid glue. And let's see here, pencil crayons. If you can get a good deal on these, if you're in like Target or whatever when it's back to school time and you can get these for super cheap, do it. But they're definitely not a must-have. They're something that can be pretty fun, but it's definitely, I find pencil crayons are actually one of the hardest things to work with in terms of art supplies. I find that I'm pretty decent at like drawing shapes, but in people or animals, I do not know how to color those. There are some people who can do the most incredible, realistic, lifelike stuff with pencil crayons, and I think that they're magicians and truly amazing, skilled people, and I don't know how they do it. It's amazing. So yeah, pencil crayons. Yeah, basically get them if they're cheap, but they're not a huge need in terms of art supplies. The other things that I didn't bother bringing out are markers, fine liners, that sort of thing. I didn't bother bringing out. I don't use them as frequently, so I wouldn't say they're a must-have, but they are kind of useful, especially if you enjoy bullet journaling and that kind of thing. Fine liners and markers are pretty great. I'm going to put the Tombow. I use Tombows pretty frequently. They're the dual tip, so they've got the kind of brush tip on one side and the felt tip on the other. and I love these. I also have tried Copics and different kinds of fine liners as well, but I prefer the Tombows over anything. They're fantastic. And yeah, and I think that's it for art supplies that isn't like paper or that kind of thing. I have tried acrylic paint in my art journals before, without a lot of success. I find that acrylic paint makes the pages stick together, so I'm not a huge fan of that. So I wouldn't recommend using them, but if you have a method that will make it not stick, then go for it, and also tell me what you do because I'd love to know. So yeah, so these are my most frequently used supplies. If there's something that you do want to try out but aren't sure if it's worth it, I've probably tried it. I've tried almost everything that you can think of, and I can tell you which ones I've loved and which ones I have not loved at all. So if you have any questions, hit me up in the comments. And if you have any suggestions on videos you'd like to see, like any of these, how I use them or what I've done with them, let me know. I can definitely turn that into a video as well. So I hope you liked this video. Subscribe if you would like to see more, and see you later.